Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Sit, relax. Welcome to Make Your Day Richer. Hey, before we start the show today, I want to show you a clip of a podcast that I help edit. Gorilla HR stands for Human Resources, hosted by my friend Becky, and her company, Gorilla HR, comes out every Monday. We have an episode that just came out yesterday. It's really great. Take a look at this clip.
Yeah, it's been a long haul, and it's still happening where characters that have disabilities are not cast by actors who have disabilities. So that's kind of the forefront of where everybody's at this point, which leaves a lot unexplored or just neglected.
Maybe a little bit of both, whether I think it comes down to, is it intentional or unintentional? Like, again, people with disabilities are showing up and saying like, hey, we're here.
Yeah, right.
Put us in the show.
So if you're an employee or an employer, you should be listening to this podcast. It's available wherever you get them. You can go to gorilla-hr.com to learn more about Becky, her services, her podcasts. And if you need help with your podcast, send me an email at makeyourdayricher@gmail.com and we can help you with that. Okay. My guest today is a debut author ready to sweep you into a world of heart-pounding adventure and legendary struggles. J.V. Hilliard, with influences from honest labor to warrior training, has scribed the tale of the realm of Warminster in his new book, The Last Keeper. If you love classical fantasy adventure tales reminiscent of Tolkien, you're in for a treat. So let's start the show.
Make your day richer than it was before. Got some good times knocking upon your front door.
Thank you so much for being here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I'm excited to talk about, your series, but let's start with your first book that's available now, The Last Keeper. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed writing it. It's like you said, it's the first in a 4-book series. So if folks like epic fantasy and dark fantasy, I think that they'll enjoy this. And it's really the tale of two stories. There's a hero's journey that's very similar to Harry Potter or Star Wars, where you've got a young man who's coming of age. He has the ability of prophecy, and so he sees the future, and he's the only one of his kind that can see the return of a fallen keeper, a man who used that same prophetic power for his own self and was punished by his gods, and he's coming back to take revenge. And so Damus, the main character in the novel, launches this 4-book long quest to stop him from doing that, and hence The Last Keeper. And then there's a bit of a fantasy romance intertwined in there, where you've got a low-born mixed blood border knight who falls in love with a high-born princess, and they're not supposed to be together, but they fall in love over the course of the novels. And does he forget he's duty bound not to pursue her? Does she put aside her social mores to be with him because of his gallantry and their growing love for one another? And that gets answered in book 3 and 4 too. So, it's really cool. I enjoyed writing it, and Last Keeper is the first of 4 that, start that adventure.
Okay. So are the other 3 written already?
Oh yeah, they're all available right now. They're all out, and you could buy the series if you wanted to. And and I've got 3 standalone novels coming out in 2025 that's preparing everybody for 2026, where the next trilogy comes out as a follow-up to this series. So this year we've got a book coming out about one of the villains and his origin story, one of the heroes and his origin story, and then, of course, the princess I mentioned a few minutes ago. She wraps it up the end of the year with a sort of a diary where she takes series 1 and connects it to series 2 in the same way you would find the diaries like you read from Dracula, for example, with Jonathan Harker and Wilhelmina Murray. You read a book, but it was through the eyes of their diary. This is her journaling the time between the final moments of series 1 and the beginning moments of series 2.
Okay, so when you're planning out a series, do you go in knowing, okay, this is going to be, before you start writing, this is a 4-book series, or do you write and then go, okay, well, this needs to be broken up. How many books is this going to be?
Well, I am a big planner.
I
So I
see. I
thought,
can tell that by
yeah, so I
the
thought
way.
I
Yeah.
thought it was gonna be the only thing where I've diverted from that is it was supposed to be a trilogy, but it really became a quadrilogy because of the fact you get into it and you just see that you've got way too much meat on the bone. And you have to carve it up a little differently.
Uh,
So I made it a quadrilogy. It wasn't the intent. My publisher, when I first approached her with the idea, she's like, "Well, fantasy has to at least be a trilogy. I'm not publishing you unless you commit to doing something longer than a book." I thought I was writing a standalone novel, and she's like, "No, no, you're writing a series." So it came a little challenging, but for me, I enjoyed that. I mean, the concept of epic fantasy is that it's epic, right? So you've got these pantheon of gods and this spell casting system and its own currency and all these geopolitical things that are going on within the novel's own history. And that takes a while to flesh out. So I'm glad she talked me into the trilogy, which became the quadrilogy.
when you're writing something like this in this genre, I mean, there's kind of like endless possibilities, right? How do you decide that storyline? I know I can tell you're a planner by the way you have all of these books
Yeah.
meticulously planned out for the year, but like that seems like that would take me 16 years just to figure out where this story is going to go and character development and all of that stuff.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I do have a cheat code, and that is I'm a nerd, and I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for 20 years.
Very
And
good.
as a result, I've battle tested a lot of these scenarios as both a dungeon master and a player character. And so you see what reacts well in a room when you're the DM and you're creating that and directing that campaign. You also see what reacts well when you're on the other side of the table as a player, reacting to what the DM is setting in terms of a story. So, in effect, your example of 16 years was really 20 years of me playing and then codifying those stories outside of a Dungeons and Dragons game and putting it into my own realm. And a lot of that comes from that gameplay. And frankly, the other side of it is too. I mean, I think doing what we do is, you enjoy being creative and doing deeper dives and building things onto it. I think what excites people about epic fantasy is what Tolkien did. Tolkien created his own language. He created these creatures from nothing and used real life experience as part of that. I've done a lot of that too because as my day job, I was a defense lobbyist for a number of years, and as a result, I saw things happen in real time that are kind of now reskinned in the novels, whether they were political, whether they were between countries, whether they were military oriented, and it adds this form of realism to it. And I think Tolkien and others have done that too. Martin did that with Game of Thrones, and Tolkien definitely did it with his World War I experience. So you've got all that kind of stuff that you use from real life, and you just bake it into the final novel.
Did you always want to write? Was that always kind of part of your plan as well, to be an author, or how did that come about?
I've always wanted to write. I wanted to when I was very young. When I got introduced to Tolkien in the fourth grade, and my uncle was a Marine, and he was paralyzed in war, and my mother was his nurse, and I grew up by his bedside, and he was like a father to me. And as a result, there was very few things he could do as a quadriplegic, and the two things he could do was one, he would write. He would type on his keyboard, and he would write mostly pulp fiction, the things you would find in magazines of the day, and short stories and anthologies and such. And watching him do that, I wanted to do that. And of course, I fell in love with The Hobbit and stuff when I was 10 years old. And the other thing he could do was play Dungeons and Dragons. It was a form of escapism for him. He could escape his body and become our dungeon master. And a 10, 11-year-old kid, that's intriguing. And you're just playing this group delusion in your head about what's going on. And for him, it was a form of escapism. For me, it really indoctrinated me into what I think is my genre of choice in fantasy adventure. And so I knew I was always going to write, but life got in the way. You graduate college, you get married, you have the house, you got to pay, bills, and starving artists, that doesn't cut it. So I went down a certain path, and then COVID allowed me to kind of get that restart button and got back to something I've always wanted to do, and now it's become my career.
What do you love about writing and the writing process of putting it together a book?
So part of it is what I said before. I'm a planner, and what appeals to me is seeing all these pieces come together and make a really solid plot line or a character arc or all of the above. And seeing that come together, I think one of the most humbling comments I get from other writers when I'm at cons or I'm at book signings and we're signing together is that they'd read my stuff and they really liked it. It was buttoned up, and they didn't have to guess at anything, and there wasn't any missing pieces. For me, that's both a challenge and something that's very rewarding. I know that I've written a story that doesn't have that many holes in it. Everybody's story has a hole in it, right? Let's face it. It is what it is. But like ultimately for me, that's what makes me get out of bed, is when someone comes to you and they've traveled to you to buy your book. They're staying overnight. They want you to sign it, and then they give you their opinion on it. And they ask you, please don't do this, or definitely do that, or what's going to happen with this character. And you know that these people care enough to buy a ticket to come and see you. And that's just, that in itself is just flattering. So you always, that also kind of motivates behind the scenes too. You want to do the next one better than you did the last one.
Yeah. When there's such a large playing field of authors, you can go self-publishing route and all of these ways to get out there. Can you offer some tips for up and coming authors, people who have never written before, about how to market themselves and how to set themselves apart from everybody else who's releasing books?
Yeah, sure. So a few things. I mean, first of all, I would tell them to use the resources at their disposal, especially if they're indie. When you have a traditional publishing house or even a hybrid publishing house, oftentimes they can bring resources like an email list or like contacts you may not have as an indie author. But if you're indie, you're all out there on your own. So social media is a place where you can grow a following. You can contact readers. You can contact beta readers. You can contact other authors, build it. You can find yourself into writing and reading groups, all those kind of things. And that's all free, save for the time value of money that you put into it on your own, right? So that's one thing I would suggest. The second thing I would suggest is, no matter where you are and what you're doing, make sure that you capture your client's contact information. So oftentimes a sign-in sheet when you're at a convention or a book signing, or when they come to your website, the first thing they should see is not your book, it's to sign up for your newsletter. Because if they're buying your book on Amazon, you have no way of getting a hold of them for the next. You have to randomly hope they find you and like you enough to follow you and wait for that. So things like that, or Goodreads or other forums in which they can connect and do some stuff, is really, I think, a way for you to maintain a sales funnel back to your audience. Secondly, I would ask them to not be afraid of constructive criticism. When I wrote my first book, it was almost 600 pages long. I thought it was 90% done. You get back edits, and you want to talk about humbling. It's a punch in the face, right? And you don't even know. And sometimes you think you've written something into the book and it's not in there, but it happened in your head and it didn't happen in the pages. So there's development editings, and so don't be afraid of that. A lot of people try to protect their art, but you can't sell your art if it's not vetted. And look, movie theaters do this, or movie companies do it all the time. They view 3 different endings to movies at 3 different theaters, and the one that gets the best response, that's the ending. So, understand your audience, make sure you can reconnect with people that have bought from you or even considering buying from you. That means they visited your site, they're following you on social media. Reach out to them, connect with them, use those resources as you can to help you market those books. And then don't fall for the scams that are out there. Everybody does. I've done it too, where you think someone's going to help you sell 1,000 books, or they're going to get you 10,000 followers. No, this is a game of attrition. It's a land war in Asia, to quote Princess Bride, right? It's one step at a time. And unless you have a name or a lot of money to pay for, a publishing house to do some stuff for you, or a publicist, I should say, in most cases, it's build as you go. So it's just going to take some time. And my publisher said, you're not going to make money in the first book. You won't make it in the second book. You hope to break even by the third book. And by the fourth book, you have enough of a following that you're making money. And that I expedited it a little bit. I started making money around book 3. So I was happy I was a little bit ahead of the curve. But you have to go into the marketing of it and understand that it's just like any other business. You just have to get to know you. They have to trust your product. They got to actually know you're going to finish a series when you say you're going to write a series. A lot of people get hung up on that. So those are the kind of things I would suggest to authors, and in particular indie authors, want to market themselves well.
I love that answer. That's a great answer. Because I go through the same thing. I get DMs all the time of people who are like, I can help you get 10 million followers. And I can, and some of it sounds really good and really exciting, but you really have to also know that like what your expectation is, and not get so discouraged if it doesn't do as well, like what your definition of success is for something.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have been touched by those, and you just have to learn from your mistakes. I've made them. Everybody makes them. So,
Yeah.
and I say, hey, look, if it's reasonably priced and you want to give it a try, give it a try. But at the end of the day, most of that stuff is not the way to go. You just have to, it's elbow grease. It's just a lot of hard work.
So true. What do you love most about your life right now?
This sounds stupid, but in my old job as a defense lobbyist, you're always looking over your shoulder, right? You make enemies. It's a zero-sum game. I'm trying to work with my client, and I have to beat you and your client to doing something, whether it's stopping something from happening or making it happen, or winning a bid or winning a grant. And it's a real negative. I mean, you have to have a thick skin for that. In this business, you come on shows like this and you have a fun time and you meet with other creatives and you chat about your work and their art and you learn a little bit more about them and you talk about stuff. And everybody in this community, instead of tearing you down and trying to get ahead, they're trying to lift you up. This is part of the most supportive community I've ever been a part of. And I wish I would have known that 20 years ago because it's just an entirely different, you learn that this is, when you find your right path, you're wondering why it took you so long to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I go through that all the time. Yes. You try everything else but what you should be doing. And then you're like, well, I guess, yeah. I wonder why everything else is not going as planned. Yeah.
Yeah, right. This is it.
Yeah. What is the best way that people can connect with you and support you?
Well, look, I'm really easy to find. jvhilliard.com will take you to my website. At JV Hilliard Books will put you in front of all of my social media accounts. You could follow me there or DM me there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for writing for everybody. I love it. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, come back anytime you got a book coming out, which sounds like we can plan that pretty far ahead. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back after this. Thank you. Life is difficult. Are you feeling overwhelmed or like you could use a little support for your mental well-being? Visit the Help Hub. It's the most comprehensive and inclusive free online destination for mental health resources, helpful tools, crisis hotlines, and supportive content. Just go to thehelphub.co to find the resources you need when you need them most. Unlike other resource pages, the Help Hub is divided into 16 different categories, ensuring that everyone in every community has access to the resources and support that matches their unique needs. Find the help you're looking for at thehelphub.co. That's our show, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now's a great time to just share the show. It's over. Tell all your friends how amazing the show was, that you have a new favorite book. And go make your day richer. Go make somebody else's day richer. You've made mine by watching this show, and I love you for it. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.